The test of trust. Commander Dane Mercer stood in the crystalline docking bay of the Imperial Palace, his military boots clicking against floors that seemed carved from frozen starlight. 3 years had passed since the Treaty of Andros ended the brutal war between the Terran Federation and the Velthian Empire. Thousands dead on both sides, entire colonies reduced to radioactive wastelands, and a hatred so deep that most thought peace impossible. Yet here he stood, a human about to serve in the heart of the enemy empire. The palace stretched before him like a dream made solid. Towers of translucent blue crystals spiraled toward the violet sky of Velthera Prime, their surfaces catching the light of twin suns and scattering it into dancing rainbows. Everything about this place spoke of power, beauty, and a civilization far older than humanity's fragile spacefaring culture. Dane adjusted his dress uniform, the dark blue fabric crisp against his athletic frame, and waited. She entered like winter itself, taking form. Empress Zara was taller than any human, nearly 7 feet of elegant, otherworldly grace. Her skin shimmered with a subtle opalescent quality, shifting between pale silver and soft blue, depending on the light. High cheekbones framed eyes of deep amber that seemed to look through rather than at him. Her hair, if it could be called that, flowed like liquid mercury down her back, occasionally moving as if stirred by invisible currents. She wore robes of midnight blue, embroidered with constellations in thread that actually glowed. The woman who killed Admiral Kovacs and shattered the Fifth Fleet at Proxima. The woman human propaganda, painted as a monster. Standing before her, Dane saw something different: intelligence, burden, and a loneliness he recognized from his own reflection. Commander Mercer. Her voice was melodic, each word precisely chosen. Your credentials are impressive. 8 years in Terran Special Operations, decorated for valor at Rigel Station, expert in close protection and tactical assessment. Tell me why a human war hero would serve a Velthian Empress. Dane met her gaze without flinching. Because wars end, Your Majesty, but the reasons we fought remain. If this peace is to last, someone needs to bridge the gap between our peoples. I would rather build that bridge than watch everything burn again. Psst. Something flickered in those amber eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Pretty words. My last 3 human guards spoke similar ideals. One stole from me, one sold information to separatist groups, and one attempted assassination. Why should you be different? Because you can test me, Your Majesty. I understand trust must be earned. A slight smile touched her lips, though it didn't reach her eyes. Then let us begin your test, Commander. She led him through corridors of impossible beauty to her private chambers. The rooms were vast, pointed with furnishings that blended technology and art in ways human designers were only beginning to understand. What caught Dane's attention, however, were the items scattered across her desk with apparent carelessness. Trade certificates worth millions of credits lay beside data crystals marked with security seals from a dozen star systems. Most striking was a small collection of Velthian soul gems, rare artifacts that stored memories and commanded prices that could purchase entire planets. These are some of my most valuable possessions, Zara said, her tone conversational. I have business to attend to across the palace. You will remain here to familiarize yourself with your duties. She paused at the doorway. You have full access to these chambers. I trust you will use your time wisely. After she left, Dane stood motionless for a full minute, his tactical mind analyzing the situation. This was clearly a test. Every previous guard had failed by either stealing, tampering, or trying to prove themselves by moving items to safety. He walked the perimeter of the chambers, checking sightlines and security systems. Noting that surveillance was active and recording good, he wanted documentation of his actions. He approached the desk, studying the valuable items without touching them. Then he activated his risk communicator and documented everything: location, description, apparent value. He flagged the security office, reported potential unsecured valuables in the Imperial chambers, and requested a standard security sweep while maintaining chain of custody. He never touched a single item. 2 hours later, Zara returned, accompanied by her head of security, a massive Velthian male named Torvin. She reviewed the security logs while Dane stood at attention, his face impassive. When she finally looked at him, That cold mask had cracked just slightly. "You are either remarkably disciplined or remarkably clever." "Commander Mercer, I am remarkably committed to doing my job properly. Your Majesty, my previous guards would have moved these items, locked them away, perhaps even taken one or two thinking I wouldn't notice." Dane allowed himself a small smile. "Those weren't my items to secure, Your Majesty. They were yours. My job is to protect you, not make decisions about your property without authorization." For the first time, Zara's expression softened genuinely. "You passed my test, Commander, but understand this. I will continue testing you. Trust is not given in my world. It is built slowly through consistent action and proven loyalty. I would expect nothing less, Your Majesty. Then prepare yourself. Tomorrow we depart for Oreos Prime. The mining guilds are threatening to break their contracts, and I must negotiate personally. It will be dangerous." Dane bowed. "I live for dangerous, Your Majesty." Shadows of Conspiracy. The shuttle ride to Oreos Prime took 6 hours, enough time for Dane to study the threat assessment and understand why this negotiation mattered. The mining guilds controlled 70% of the rare minerals needed for faster-than-light drives. If they broke their contracts with the Velthian Empire, the economic consequences would ripple across a dozen star systems. But economics rarely motivated assassination attempts, and Dane's instincts screamed that someone wanted Zara dead. He watched her work during the flight, her long fingers dancing across holographic displays as she reviewed proposals and counter-proposals. She was brilliant, he realized. Every argument anticipated, every weakness in the guild's position, identified and exploited. This wasn't the bloodthirsty conqueror from human propaganda broadcasts. This was a leader fighting to hold an empire together through intelligence and will. "You're staring, Commander," she said, without looking up. "Apologies, Your Majesty. I'm reviewing the security arrangements for the summit." She did look at him, one elegant eyebrow raised. "And what do those security arrangements tell you?" "That someone wants you exposed. The venue is terrible. Too many sight lines, insufficient barriers. And the local security force has been replaced 3 times in as many months. Someone is creating opportunities." Zara's expression grew serious. "You see clearly. Minister Varric assured me the arrangements were adequate." That name snagged Dane's attention. Varric, Zara's chief advisor, had served her for over 20 years. He was considered absolutely loyal, a pillar of her administration. But Dane had learned in special operations that the most dangerous betrayals came from those closest to power.
"Your Majesty."
"With respect, I'd like to review Minister Varric's communications regarding this summit." "That would be highly inappropriate, Commander. Varric has been my advisor since before you were born, and I have been your guard for 3 days, which means I have no loyalty except to your safety, no political considerations except keeping you alive. Please, Your Majesty, let me do my job." She studied him for a long moment, amber eyes calculating. Finally, she nodded and granted him access to certain administrative files. What Dane found in the next hour chilled him. Subtle manipulations in scheduling, security contractors with suspicious backgrounds, communications with guild representatives that suggested someone was feeding them negotiating positions in advance. Nothing definitive, nothing that couldn't be explained away. But the pattern was there for anyone trained to see it. The summit itself was a nightmare from a security perspective. The venue was a converted mining facility, all hard surfaces and sharp angles. Perfect for assassins and terrible for protection. Dane positioned himself behind Zara's right shoulder, his hand never far from the plasma pistol concealed beneath his jacket. She negotiated with ruthless efficiency, but he barely heard the words. His attention was on the crowd, the exits, the suspicious maintenance worker who had no reason to be on this level. When the blade came, it came fast. A figure in guild colors lunged from the crowd, a monomolecular knife glinting in the harsh industrial lighting. Dane moved on pure instinct, shoving Zara aside and catching the blade across his ribs instead of her throat. Pain exploded through his side, but training overrode agony. He trapped the assassin's wrist, twisted until bones snapped, and drove his forehead into the attacker's face. The man went down hard. Chaos erupted. Security forces converged, Guild representatives shouted accusations, and Dane found himself on the floor, bleeding and trying to keep pressure on a wound that was deeper than he'd initially thought. Then Zara was there, her cool hands pushing his aside, her voice commanding an absolute, "Get medical here immediately." "Commander, stay still." The attacker, Dane managed through gritted teeth. "Question him. Find out who sent him. The attacker is unconscious. You hit him hard enough to crack his skull." Her hands moved with surprising skill, applying pressure, stabilizing him until the medical team arrived. "You took a blade meant for me. That's the job, Your Majesty." Something changed in her expression. The cold mask cracked further, revealing genuine emotion beneath. "No one has done that for me in a very long time, Commander Mercer." "Perhaps you truly are different." They transported him to the Imperial Medical Facility on the Palace Station, where Velthian doctors worked with technology that made Terran medicine seem primitive. The wound sealed quickly, though it would ache for days. When he woke, Zara was sitting beside his bed, still wearing her blood-stained diplomatic robes, looking exhausted and somehow more real than she had before. "The assassin died during interrogation," she said quietly. "Poison implant. Professional grade." "Someone wanted to ensure he couldn't talk." "Eric's arrangements," Dane said. "Your Majesty, please. Let me investigate him." She was quiet for a long time. "If you're wrong, you will have insulted my most trusted advisor. If you're right," she trailed off, the implications clear. "Very well, Commander, but discreetly, and report only to me." That night, alone in his quarters, Dane reviewed everything he could access about Minister Varric: financial records, communications, travel histories. The pattern grew clearer with each piece of data. Varric was positioning himself, building alliances with rival factions, siphoning funds meant for Imperial projects. But why? What was his endgame? 2 days later, during a formal reception for visiting dignitaries, Dane observed Varric engaged in a quiet conversation with a Krell syndicate representative. The Krell were known for their mercenary politics and their willingness to destabilize regions for profit. Dane couldn't hear the conversation, but he recorded it, noting the familiar way they interacted. These weren't strangers meeting diplomatically. These were co-conspirators coordinating plans. The Empress departs, the summons came at dawn. Dane was running combat drills in the palace training facility when Zara's personal secretary found him. "Her Majesty requires your presence immediately, Commander." He found her on her private terrace, a curved platform of crystal that jutted from the palace's highest tower. From here, the entire capital city sprawled below and beyond it. The purple-tinted forests of Velthera Prime stretched to distant mountains. The twin suns were rising, painting everything in shades of gold and violet. Zara stood at the railing, her mercury hair moving in the morning breeze, and for a moment Dane forgot she was an empress. She looked almost vulnerable. "Two of the colony worlds in the Omega sector are on the brink of civil war," she said without preamble. "Old ethnic tensions, resource disputes, the usual stupidity that drives beings to kill each other. If I don't intervene personally, thousands will die, and the sector will destabilize. Then we should prepare to depart immediately." "Your Majesty, no." She turned to face him, and her amber eyes held an emotion he hadn't seen before: uncertainty. "This will require delicate diplomacy, weeks of negotiation. I need you here, Dane. I need you to watch the palace, to continue investigating Varric, to protect what I've built while I'm gone." It was the first time she'd used his first name. The intimacy of it struck him harder than the assassin's blade had. "Your Majesty, my job is to protect you. I should be at your side. Your job is to do what I command." Her voice hardened, but he saw the conflict in her expression. "I am testing you again, Dane. Can you be trusted with responsibility when I'm not watching? Can you protect my interests when I'm not here to enforce your loyalty?" He wanted to argue, to insist that his place was with her, but he understood what she was really asking. In the weeks since he'd taken the blade for her, something had shifted between them. The professional distance had eroded, replaced by something neither of them had acknowledged aloud. Long conversations during late-night security briefings, moments where their eyes met and held just a fraction too long. The time she'd touched his shoulder in thanks, and neither of them had moved away. "I will protect everything you've built," he said quietly. "You have my word." She stepped closer, near enough that he could smell the strange, pleasant scent she carried, like ozone and flowers that didn't exist on Earth. "I discovered something about you, Commander Mercer. You've been sending half your salary to a refugee camp on the border worlds. Human and Velthian families displaced by the war." He stiffened. "That's my private business, Your Majesty, as is my funding of the sanctuaries." She smiled slightly. "We're more alike than I expected. Both trying to heal wounds we didn't create." "Your Majesty, Zara," she interrupted. "When we're alone, call me Zara. I'm tired of titles and formality. I'm tired of being the Empress every moment of every day." His heart hammered against his ribs. "That wouldn't be appropriate." "Nothing about what I'm feeling is appropriate," she said. And before he could respond, she closed the remaining distance and kissed him. It was like touching lightning. Her lips were cooler than human lips, her body taller and leaner, but the passion in that kiss was universal. Dane's arms went around her instinctively, pulling her closer, and for a perfect, dangerous moment. Nothing else existed. No duty, no species differences, no political consequences. Just a people who had found something unexpected in each other. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Zara's opalescent skin had flushed slightly, taking on warmer tones. "I've wanted to do that since you took that blade from me," she admitted. "I've wanted you to do that since the moment I met you," Dane confessed. "But Your Majesties or this is dangerous for both of us." "I know." She touched his face gently. "Which is why I need to leave. I need to think clearly, and I cannot do that when you're near." 3 weeks, Dane. I'll be gone 3 weeks. If what we feel is real, it will survive the absence. And if you're truly loyal, you'll prove it by protecting my empire while I'm gone. And when you return, her smile was sad and hopeful at once. "When I return, we'll face whatever comes. Together." She left that evening, her departure marked by formal ceremony and military escort. Dane watched her ship rise into the violet sky until it vanished among the stars. Then he returned to his quarters and began the work she'd entrusted to him. The investigation into Varric intensified. With Zara gone, the minister had grown bolder, holding secret meetings, moving large sums through shell accounts. Dane traced financial flows and discovered something that made his blood boil. Varric had been embezzling funds meant for the sanctuaries that Zara funded. Children, human and Velthian, both had been left without medicine, food, education, while Varric lined his pockets and paid conspirators. But worse than the theft was the pattern. Dane uncovered in military deployments and command assignments. Varric was positioning loyal officers, removing those faithful to Zara, preparing something. Coup. He was planning to seize power during her absence, using her own military forces to overthrow her. Dane sat in his quarters at midnight, staring at the evidence he'd compiled, and faced an impossible decision. If he acted now, exposed Varric publicly, he might prevent the coup, but would be accused of overstepping his authority. A human guard arresting a Velthian minister would spark outrage, possibly reignite human-Velthian tensions. But if he waited for Zara's return, Varric might complete his preparations and strike when she was most vulnerable. He thought of her kiss, her trust, the way she'd called him by his first name. She'd asked if he could protect her interests when she wasn't watching. That was the test. Not obedience. Not blind loyalty. But the courage to do what was right, even when it cost him everything. Dane opened a secure channel and began contacting the military commanders he'd identified as genuinely loyal to Zara. It was time to act. Time to show her that some humans still understood the meaning of honor. The Humans' Gambit, the High Council Chamber, was a masterpiece of Velthian architecture. A circular room with walls of transparent crystal that looked out onto the stars. Normally it hosted formal debates and diplomatic ceremonies. Tonight Dane had transformed it into a courtroom, and he was both prosecutor and defendant. 23 council members sat in the elevated seats, their opalescent faces ranging from curious to hostile. Minister Varric stood across from Dane, his expression one of wounded dignity, perfectly calibrated to appear the victim. Right. Behind them, a dozen military commanders that Dane had contacted stood witness. Their hands near their weapons, loyalties tested and proven. "This is outrageous," Varric declared, his melodic voice pitched to carry. "A human guard, employed mere weeks, dares to accuse me of treason? This is exactly why we should never have trusted your species." "Commander Mercer," Council Speaker Theron intoned, her ancient face grave, "you have made severe accusations against a minister who has served the Empress faithfully for 20 years. Present your evidence or face charges of sedition yourself." Dane stepped forward, his military bearing perfect, despite the hammering of his heart. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "Council members, I present evidence of systematic embezzlement, conspiracy with hostile foreign powers, and planned military coup against Empress Zara." He activated the holographic display. Financial records materialized in the air, showing the flow of funds from Imperial accounts to Varric's shell companies. Communications appeared next. Encrypted messages between Varric and Krell syndicate operatives discussing regime change and power transition. Finally, military deployment orders that positioned Varric's loyal officers in key positions while transferring Zara's most faithful commanders to remote posts. "These are fabrications," Varric protested, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. "Humans are skilled at digital manipulation. This proves nothing." "Then explain the testimony of Commander Theros," Dane said, gesturing to one of the military officers. The grizzled Velthian stepped forward, his expression hard. "Minister Varric approached me 6 months ago," Theros said. "He offered me command of the Imperial Guard, if I would support him when the Empress was removed from power." Those were his exact words. "I reported this to intelligence, but my report was buried." I now understand Varric had infiltrated that office as well. 3 more commanders came forward with similar stories. The evidence was overwhelming, but Dane knew evidence wasn't always enough. Politics thrived on loyalty, and Varric had built his web carefully. "Even if this were true," Varric said, his voice taking on a desperate edge, "what of the sanctuaries? Commander Mercer accuses me of embezzlement, but has he mentioned that those funds went to military preparedness? The Empress has grown soft, wasting resources on orphans and refugees while our enemies grow strong. I sought to strengthen the Empire, not weaken it." "You sought to steal from children," Dane said coldly. "Human and Velthian children whose parents died in a war you helped prolong. I've seen the sanctuary reports, medical supplies that never arrived. Teachers who weren't paid, children going hungry while you purchased estates on 3 worlds. You dare lecture me about Velthian children, human?" Varric's mask finally cracked, revealing the hatred beneath. "Your species has killed millions of ours. You're a weapon she's foolishly aimed at her own people." "No," came a new voice from the chamber entrance. "He is exactly what I hoped he would be." Everyone turned. Zara stood in the doorway, still wearing her travel clothes, her mercury hair windswept, her amber eyes blazing. She strode into the chamber with absolute authority, and every council member stood in respect. "Your Majesty," Varric recovered quickly, bowing low. "Thank the stars you've returned. This human has run wild in your absence, making accusations that are entirely accurate," Zara interrupted. "I returned early because I received Commander Mercer's reports. Everything he's presented here I have verified independently." She turned to the council. "Minister Varric is guilty of treason, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The evidence is irrefutable." Varric's face contorted with rage. "You would trust a human over me? Over 20 years of loyal service? He's manipulated you, poisoned your mind against your own people?" "He saved my life," Zara said quietly. "Protected my empire when I could not. And yes, Varric, I trust him more than I trust you." In desperation, Varric reached for a weapon concealed in his robes. Dane moved instantly, but Zara was faster. A bolt of energy from her personal sidearm struck Varric's hand, sending the weapon spinning away. Varric lunged at her anyway, hidden blade appearing in his other hand. Dane intercepted him midway, taking the blade strike across his arm while delivering a devastating strike to Varric's midsection. They went down together, rolling across the polished floor. Varric fought with the strength of desperation, but Dane had youth, training, and righteous anger on his side. He ended it with a precise strike to Varric's temple that left the minister unconscious. Rising slowly, blood dripping from his arm, Dane looked at Zara. "Your empire is secure, Your Majesty." She crossed to him, her hands gentle as she examined his wound. "At considerable cost to yourself?" Again. "Worth it," he said simply. The council was silent, stunned by the violence and revelation. Finally, Speaker Theron spoke. "Commander Mercer, you have proven yourself loyal beyond question. The council recognizes your service and thanks you." "Furthermore," Zara said, her voice ringing with authority, "Commander Mercer is hereby appointed Commander of the Imperial Guard and granted full authority to reform our security apparatus. Any who question this decision question me." No one spoke. The message was clear. Everything changes. They didn't speak until they reached her private chambers. Zara's hands were shaking slightly as she poured 2 glasses of Velthian wine, a rare vintage that shimmered like captured starlight. She handed one to Dane, and their fingers brushed, sending electricity through the contact. "I shouldn't have left," she said finally. "I put you in an impossible position." "You gave me a test," Dane replied, "and I passed it." "You did more than pass. You saved everything I've built." She took a drink, her amber eyes never leaving his face. "The sanctuaries are fully funded again. The embezzled credits have been recovered. The military has been purged of traitors. In 3 weeks you accomplished what I've failed to do in years. I had your example to follow." He set down his glass and stepped closer. "Zara, I need to say something. Not as your guard, but as myself." "Then speak as yourself." "Dane Mercer, I love you." The words were simple, absolute. "I didn't plan to. I didn't want to. But watching you these past weeks, seeing your strength and your compassion, how you carry the weight of an empire while still caring about orphan children, I love you. Not the Empress. You." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You foolish, wonderful human. Don't you understand? Loving me is dangerous. My enemies will use you against me. My supporters will question my judgment. There are those who would kill you simply for being human. I know, and I don't care." He took her hands. "I didn't come here to find love. I came to build peace. But sometimes peace is built one person at a time, one connection that bridges impossible divides. If we can love each other human and Velthian, guard and Empress maybe, others can too." "You're proposing yourself as a political symbol?" "I'm proposing myself as someone who loves you and wants to face whatever comes together," she laughed. A sound he'd rarely heard, rich and genuine. "You saved my empire, and now you speak of changing it. You are either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both," he admitted. She pulled him close then, her cool lips finding his in a kiss that was hungry, desperate, full of weeks of separation and suppressed desire. They moved together to her bedchamber, hands exploring unfamiliar bodies, finding unexpected harmony in their differences. Her skin was cooler, but incredibly smooth, her body longer and leaner, but perfectly matched to his. They made love with tenderness and passion, 2 beings from different worlds discovering they fit together perfectly. Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets that felt like woven silk. Watching the stars through the crystal ceiling, Zara's head rested on his chest, her mercury hair pooling across his skin. "This will cause a scandal," she said quietly. "The Empress taking a human lover, some will call it weakness. Others will call it betrayal of our species, and then let them talk." Dane stroked her hair gently. "You've spent your whole life being what others needed you to be. Maybe it's time to be what you want to be." She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm with decision. "Tomorrow I will announce to the High Council that you are to be my consort. Not my guard, not my commander, but my partner. There will be opposition, perhaps significant opposition. I can handle opposition. Can you handle being the most controversial figure in the Empire? Can you handle the threats, the scrutiny, the endless political maneuvering?" He turned to face her, his blue eyes meeting her amber ones. "I can handle anything as long as I'm with you. That's not devotion to duty. That's just truth. Her smile was radiant. Then tomorrow, we change everything. Together. The next morning, the High Council chamber filled with every significant political figure in the Empire. Rumors had spread quickly about Zara's early return and Varric's arrest. Now everyone waited to hear what the Empress would say. Zara entered with Dane at her side. Not behind her as a guard should be, but beside her as an equal. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. She stood before the assembled council, regal and absolute, and made her announcement. Members of the council, honored guests, I stand before you today to speak of change. Minister Varric's betrayal revealed weaknesses in our system, places where loyalty could be bought and power corrupted. But his betrayal also revealed something else, that character and integrity are not bound by species. Commander Dane Mercer, a human, proved more loyal than those who shared my blood. He protected not just my life, but my vision for a better empire. She paused, letting the words sink in. Therefore, I am announcing that Commander Mercer will become my consort. He will stand beside me not as servant, but as partner. Some of you will object to this. Some will call it weakness or foolishness. But I say this. If the Empire cannot accept that honor and loyalty transcend species, then perhaps the Empire deserves to fall. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. Some voices were supportive, others hostile. Zara waited, letting them react, her expression serene. Finally, Speaker Theron raised her hand for silence. Your Majesty, this is unprecedented. There are laws, traditions, which I am well within my authority to change, Zara interrupted. The question before this council is simple. Do you trust my judgment? I have led you through war and peace. I have grown the Empire's wealth and influence. I have earned the right to choose my own path. One by one, the council members signaled their acceptance, some enthusiastically, others reluctantly, but none willing to openly defy her. When the vote was complete, Zara turned to Dane and took his hand in front of everyone.
Act!
So begins a new chapter, she said. Not just for us, but for all who believe peace is built through understanding, not separation. Weeks later, Dane stood on the terrace where Zara had first kissed him. Watching the twin suns set over the capital, Zara joined him, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Having regrets yet? She asked. Not even one, he turned in her embrace. Though I do wonder what Admiral Kovacs would say if he could see me now. The admiral you served under during the war. The same. He hated Velthians with a passion. He'd probably call me a traitor. Are you? Dane considered the question seriously. No. I'm loyal to what's right, not to old hatreds. If that makes me a traitor to prejudice, then I'll wear that title proudly. She kissed him softly. I love you, Dane Mercer. My human, my consort, my partner in building something better than what came before. I love you too, Zara, my empress, my partner, my home.